Well, I've been saying, I've been covering the American Rescue Plan for a little bit now. And the more I cover it, the more I'm just like, oh, COVID's just an excuse for them to get money to the organizations they've been wanting to give money to for a long time. I guess under Trump, these organizations didn't get their piece of the pie. And so this is just like, oh, we'll get you your piece of the pie. They don't really necessarily care about the American people as much in this, although they'll say they do all over the place. But the money is just for all kinds of things that have nothing to do with COVID-19. And they just kind of add COVID-19 as an excuse to appropriate millions and billions of dollars to organizations that, quite frankly, probably don't need it. Anyway, as an example of this, I just thought I'd do a little stream in order to get kind of a video recording of this. Section 7204. As I was preparing for tonight's stream at 10 o'clock, I came across this little gem. And I decided to do some math. It's not hard, you just type it into Google. Google's got a built-in calculator. Anyway, section 7204. Railroad Retirement Board and Office of the Inspector General funding. In addition to amounts otherwise made available, there are appropriated for fiscal year 2021 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated, which honestly, the Treasury has absolutely no money. So how the fuck can they have come up with anything to pay for any of this bill? If the government's in debt, right, as our government is, and they're like, oh, well, what's in the Treasury? Seems like nothing would be in the Treasury. Just to start that off, but let's just assume that they've got something in the bank, right? That they're just in debt, right? Their credit card account at the Federal Reserve is heavily overdrawn, but their debit account over at the Treasury still got something in it, right? Anyway, 27,975,000. Not a lot. To remain available until expended for the Railroad Retirement Board to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus, of which 6,800,000 shall be for additional hiring and overtime bonuses as needed to administer the Railroad Unemployment Insurance Act. Nothing to do with COVID. And 21,175,000 shall be to supplement, not supplant, existing resources devoted to operations and improvements for the information technology investment initiatives of the Railroad Retirement Board. All right. Now, what's interesting about this is that little one there within the parentheses says to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus. However, what they then continue to do is say that 6,800,000 plus 21,175,000 is for things that don't seem to have anything to do with preventing, preparing for, or responding to coronavirus. Now, if you're curious, if you add 21,175,000 to 6,800,000, it equals exactly 27,975,000, which means that they've actually left $0 whatsoever to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus. Zero. Now, then they appropriate an additional $500,000 to go to the Railroad Retirement Board Office of Inspector General in order to investigate and audit this kind of stuff. Right? It shows you how much they care. Only 500,000. It's like, oh, it's only 27 million. Almost 28 million. It doesn't need that much money in order to audit that kind of thing, right? But it's just astounding to me. I guess they didn't think anybody would do the math. This is just one little provision. This is just one time that I decided to put the numbers in, run them, and see what comes out. What comes out at the end? What's actually left for responding to COVID-19? And the answer in this section is zero. Absolutely zero. What's wrong with the numbers? 27,975,000 to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus. However, they then say that 6,800,000 is for additional hiring and overtime bonuses to administer the Railroad Unemployment Insurance Act. That's got nothing to do with responding to coronavirus. 21,175,000 is to go to existing resources devoted to operations and improvements for the information technology investment initiatives of the Railroad Retirement Board. Nothing to do with coronavirus. 21,175,000 plus 6,800,000 is equal to exactly 27,975,000, which means that leaves $0, zero, out of this section for responding to coronavirus. That's what's wrong with the numbers. What's wrong with the numbers is they say, oh, this is for responding to COVID. But then they go ahead and say, well, actually, this is not for responding to COVID. This is to administer the Railroad Unemployment Insurance Act, and this is to supplement operations and improvements for the information technology investment initiatives of the Railroad Retirement Board. Absolutely nothing to do with COVID, nothing to do with responding to it, nothing to do with preparing for it or preventing it, absolutely everything to do with the Railroad Unemployment Insurance Act and the information technology investment initiatives of the Railroad Retirement Board. That's what's wrong with the numbers. What's wrong with the numbers is they've said, oh, this is for this. However, we've only left zero to actually do that. That's what's wrong with the numbers. Isn't this? I've been seeing this throughout the entire thing. But this is just the first time I've actually ran the numbers because I was just like, you know what? I'm curious. How much is actually left over? Zero. The answer is zero for responding to it. Now, if you want to go ahead and look at the Railroad Unemployment Insurance Act, and you want to look at the information technology investment initiatives of the Railroad Retirement Board, and you want to tell me that actually, no, those things do nothing but respond to COVID-19, then feel free. However, no, I don't think they do. And in fact, I've already seen in previous sections where the Railroad Unemployment Insurance Act is brought up and amended, right? And it's got nothing to do with COVID. It's all about just benefits and not, benefits to keep people on that are sick. You think the Railroad Board is a pension plan? Usually stimulus bills shore up balance sheets of pension plans. Same thing happened in 2009. This whole thing is bailouts. The entire thing is bailouts. Bailouts for states for their bad policies, bailouts for airports and their just lack of business, bailouts for railroads and their lack of business, public transportation projects. This is their idea of a green, not a Green New Deal, but a New Deal, right? They think that they're doing the same thing that happened like in World War II, right? They think, oh, if we just spend a bunch of government money and put America to work, then we'll save America after they screwed America. Right, by telling everybody, no, you can't work or we'll fine you. You can't work or you'll go to jail. Oh, now it's okay to work because our guy's in office. It's driving me insane. And yeah, it is just a pension plan and they really are just shoring up balance sheets because people are skimming, right? People are always skimming. But yeah, this is just zero. Absolutely zero is left to respond to coronavirus. They sit here and they say, oh, this much to respond to this. However, it's actually for these things. State and local aid is probably needed due to declining tax revenue. Oh, but this isn't the only section that deals with that. There are sections and sections and sections. I mean, yeah, right? You might say it's needed. right? However, if they've put in bad policies that have caused that, and then it's like, oh, it's okay, the federal government's just going to bail us out. Like, I see something wrong with that, right? Other states, however, right, they decided, okay, we're not going to close everybody down. We're going to allow people to work, and getting demonized for it this entire time are going to be left being like, oh, so we don't get any funds. While California and New York, who've closed down and lost substantially, are going to be bailed out. And they figure, oh, it's fine. We can do whatever we want. We can cause people to go unemployed. We can cause people to go hungry. We can cause people to become homeless. And we'll just bail it all out. We'll just bail the states out. And so it's just a bailout for bad policies, right? You got bad people, just idiots in government, really, just children mentally. And then you're going to just, oh, it's okay, because our friends in government will bail us out. And just screw over the American taxpayer, effectively. Like, screw them. The reasoning is that job losses become permanent with the assistance. There are no states that are in good shape right now. Without assistance? No. Because I saw something earlier where they actually, like, poverty, like, for instance, in Baltimore, right? Lots of money, lots of federal money goes to Baltimore in order to help with housing, in order to help with jobs and job creation and that kind of stuff. However, right, it goes through all these different organizations, and all these different organizations take their piece of the pie in order to administer and run their nonprofit or whatever it is that they're doing, right? And none of it actually reaches people on the ground, right? Apparently, in Baltimore, there is $60 million a year going to fund a tent city, right? While they have thousands of homes that are just uninhabited, right? So they're not actually putting that money to any good use. What they're doing is they're creating, they implement their policies. It creates poverty. And then they say, oh, well, we have all this poverty. We need all this federal funding in order to deal with this poverty. But they never actually want to deal with the poverty, because then they would have to stop receiving funding. If they eliminated the problem of the poverty in their area by getting rid of their bad policies and allowing people to actually work and stuff, then they wouldn't be able to get funding from the federal government. And since their job is literally to manage problems that they create, they don't actually want to fix the problem. You know, I've done the same thing before, right? Like, somebody wants me to clean a dirty pool. It's like, okay, I'll clean, a little bit of the pool. And I mean, like, I'm not so bad where the pool will eventually get clean. But, the more time it takes, the dirtier it will get over time. And it kind of just extends the problem, allows the problem. So I can actually collect more money in the long run by not really getting down and cleaning the pool in one day, but rather allowing more leaves and shit to fall in it so that I can then get more money. Like, I've done the same thing. It's not an uncommon tactic. And I know people who do it quite often. But these people have taken it to a whole nother level, where instead they're getting money from the federal government to solve a problem that they have no intention of solving, right? They'll spend money on researching how to solve the problem. And they'll be like, oh, this is what we should do. But that actually goes against our core beliefs. So we're not going to actually do anything, right? Look, if the economy dives, state and local governments can't just print money like the feds can. Well, that might change, right? Because there used to be multiple currencies back before the Federal Reserve came in place, right? The Federal Reserve is just a bunch of banks that got together, and they all had different banknotes, right? And so it's just like, oh, we'll put it under one currency. If the federal currency were to dive and the federal government were to go under, it's very possible that each individual state would come up with its own, like, banknotes or its own reserve system. I mean, that's just something that happens, right? Like in Brazil, their currency dived, or their currency had like super hyperinflation. And so what they do, they got rid of the old currency and just started creating a new one, right? Just start over with a new one. Kind of a similar thing with the European Union, right? The euro is a new currency. They used to have just each of these countries had their own currencies, and the currencies were, very hyperinflated, right? But then they come around and they join together and they create this new currency, and the new currency is more valuable, right? Because there's just not as much of it, right? But it's the only currency people are going to accept from now on. So this whole thing with the fiat currency, it's very manipulative. It's very, what's the word I want to use? Manipulable, I guess, is the word I want to use. It can be manipulated in such a way that, like, it's fine. You just start off with a new currency, right? Like the U.S. dollar, I'm not necessarily so worried about the U.S. dollar as I'm just concerned about the amount of just graft or grift that's going on here, the amount of like corruption in general, the amount of like the broad and deepness of the swamp, the government swamp, right? Yeah, Brazil and lots of countries have their issues with inflation. But do we want those kind of issues here in the United States? I don't, right? I mean, like my burger over at Whataburger has gone up in price and cost. It used to be like $8 and like 38 cents. It's now $9 and like 13 cents, right? So that's just what's going to happen. Is costs for people like you and me are going to go up, while people who are like, got this situation with the federal government where they can just get this money from them all the time, they're not going to be as concerned about it because it's basically free money to them. They're not actually doing anything to like get it, right? Sure, they'll show up to an office and they'll sit there at their computer, but they'll really just be going through tweets. They'll just be tweeting about how bad people are, right? How society needs to do all this while they're sitting there in a position where they can actually make a difference, but they don't really want to make a difference because then that kind of cuts their paycheck. Because if they actually solve a problem, they got no more problems to solve, no more reason to request funds. What are they going to do then, right? Get a real job? So that's what's wrong with the numbers here. What's wrong with the numbers here is they say it's all about coronavirus. Respond to this. However, it's really zero for the coronavirus to respond to it. And I'm just like, I see this the whole time. Just going through this, the whole thing is just like, and coronavirus. They just tagged coronavirus to every single one of these provisions in here in order to make it seem like the money is for responding to COVID, when in reality it's for the same old shit, right? It's for the same old shit. And so that's what's wrong. That's what this whole bill is. I'm more than like 2/3 of the way through. I'm about like 2/3 of the way through, and I still haven't come across a section where they talk about money to individuals, right? That $1,400 that's all over the news, right? Oh, the $2,000 that was there. Oh, well, you got $600. Oh, it's going to be $1,400. Still haven't found that. Still have not gotten to that yet. All right. You'll be the first to know as soon as I do get to it. But right now, we're talking about railroads and public transportation projects. Right after we talked about airport bailouts. And now the next one is funding for claims and appeals processes. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to get a short video out of it. I started chatting, so I kind of went on a tangent there. I just wanted to kind of get this recorded to be its own similar thing. I'm going to throw it up on YouTube. At 10 p.m. tonight, I'm going to be back with the full summary of what I've gone through. And that's starting at section 6003. And that's a beauty. That's a beauty right there. That section. Can't wait to go over that one with you guys. And we'll stop where I end off at. Well, thanks for watching. Follow if you haven't already. I'll see you guys tonight.